This is the second of the creature design videos, and unlike a lot of my videos, it's quite a relaxed format. So I'm basically using speed ramped footage to talk over the things that I'm doing in the video. So in this one, a little bit more drawing, and then moving on to why I would use Nomad and ZBrush. So in the last video, we finished off with a line drawing. So I start this video off with doing another layer over the top of that. So I'm still in Procreate at this point. And what I'm doing is basically, this is like the equivalent of like comic illustration, really. So inking for comics. So what I'm doing is taking my own artwork from the previous video, and I'm just improving the anatomy yet again. So I'm getting the volumes right. You can see there on the forearm of the wing, and the muscle around the pectoral muscle, just improving it again, improving the knee, improving the flow of the tail. So it's, you don't need to do this, depending on what your need is, if you know what you're designing for. If you're going to paint it, which I do in this particular bit, and we don't need that, this is a nice clean line to start painting under or over, which again is, that there's many ways to do creature design, many of the different mediums that you can use to design this stuff. So, and obviously don't forget, pen and pencil is a good one. So you don't need to come into any of this expensive equipment if you don't want to. So I'm doing the wing there. I'm indicating the folds of the flaps of the wing, which we probably won't get to in the sculpting on this particular video. But we're going to do some sculpting of the wings later on in ZBrush. Again, showing more detail, going to go over the texture again, just to highlight where we might want that, and then a little bit of detailing with things like the tail, and then I've moved into finer details now, so which will eventually move into things like stippling, so more spots. So it was good to do a silhouette like you saw me do there. It's good to show that silhouette to see if it's reading. So I've just made with the selection tool, I just made a layer that's a solid layer, and then back over the top with working on a higher layer for the stippling in a moment. So I'm looking for stippling brushes there, and then just going in and adding some very heavy shaded areas. Now it's locked to the layer below. It's using clipping mask, so therefore it's not going outside the lines. So I find that quite useful, and because it's clipping mask, that can be turned on and off. So nice big stipple brush there, and it's giving me stippling wherever I want within that defined area. So stippling's only one way that you can do this kind of thing. There's obviously cross hatching and go back to pencil kind of effects if you want, but stippling is one that I'm working with a lot at the minute. So I do a lot of botanical art, as I think I said in the last video. So layer over the top, and then I'm just washing in colour now. And again, on this video, we're going into sculpting, so this isn't needed. I've done this simply because this creature is going to be used quite a bit. I just wanted to do a quick paint over of it, and again, I'm not taking up many minutes of this video. So washing in loads of different colours, so reds and yellows, and lighter where it's the thin skin. So things like the wing area are a lot lighter. Lots of reds around what would be the facial area. Put some blues in there. So as a very quick paint test, any colour, splashing in any of these colours as an underlayer is not going to be a problem. I definitely like that idea of getting reds in wherever there's blood vessels close to the surface. And bear in mind that the front of this creature is actually a plant, so you'd have to do some thinking about whether you want some green in there, some chlorophyll. Would have just kept it like a very heavily yellow. Basically I've kept it this yellowy greeny kind of look, which is just a choice I made for this particular bit. So I've done a shadow layer there. So, you know, generally I build these things up in layers. And again, you can see there I've built in a light layer, I've built in, you know, 2 shadow layers. But it's kind of up to you, what, you know, depending on what you need to do. Now, once they're all crushed down into layers, or you can save a version and crush them into layers, I sometimes just do like a little bit of a chop up, and I'll basically play around with the anatomy a bit. And sometimes if you're learning about your own character, your own creature, then this is a good thing to do, because you've got body parts on different layers. So here I've separated the wing off. And now what I can do is I can see what he's like. Even in 2D, I can see what he's like by bending the wing, you know, just see if he works. If he flaps down, what would he look like? So this, you know, this is a very quick way of exploring that anatomy. I'm using the warp tool there. You know, smudge and warp are good for this kind of work. And it doesn't even have to look like a finished piece. This is still exploratory. It's still me trying to, you know, to decide, you know, is this creature working? Am I happy with it as a design? Now, in the modelling, I only use the line work. I don't need all of this noise from the colour. It's, you know, it's too much for what we would need for our modelling. But it's good to have it as a reference, because it kind of helps you work out how you'd have it long term. You can paint in things like hairs and scales and all of the details that you'd want on your creature when he's finished. But it's not essential, certainly not for this video. So I did toy with not putting this bit in, but because it was done, then why not add it in? That's an overlay I've just done. So I've added a yellow overlay and then used different blend modes, including that one there, which was a saturation mode. So on to how do we then block out this as a character, a creature. I keep saying character. So I've moved to Nomad Sculpt on the iPad. I was already on the iPad. And I've put it in the background, as you can see there, as a reference, just the last version. And I've used the tube tool, and this is the best tool for blocking out. This is nearly as good as what we call ZSpheres in ZBrush. So it's basically a long tube, and at every point along the tube, every vertex, you can change the scale of it. And that means anything that's organic, like this kind of creature, you can just, you know, basically make the full body in one single piece like that. And you can see how quick this was. Obviously it's speeded up, but it doesn't take me long to define that body shape, especially if there's artwork underneath it. Now it's not the artwork isn't isometric. It's not completely flat. Orthographic, should I say. It's basically just a slightly three-dimensional three-quarter view, and I don't need it completely flat because I'm not building it exactly to it. I'm building it, you know, as I'm going along. I'm building it as I want it to look. So the front bit, the head bit off the Darlingtonia plant is just 2 little like fins or tentacles or something. So I've just taken a bit of geometry and then just chopped the shape away using the trim tool, and then smoothed that down, voxel remeshed it, and then that gives me this piece to work with. And obviously I want it on both sides, so at some point I'll go in and I'll just use mirror there, you can see, and symmetrically mirror it. So that gives us our little dangly bits at the front, which are very creature-like, as I've said. So remember, this is a real plant. This is Darlingtonia californica. This is found in, you know, Northern California, in marshland and bogs. So it's a carnivorous plant, and it gets flies going in at the front end, and they get trapped in there. So it's a real, you know, I love using real things from our world and then converting them to our creature designs. So I'm just using the clay build-up brush, which is just clay in Nomad, and just literally starting to, you know, give some idea of where the surface details will be. It's still very much a block out. I'm not going into any crazy detail. I'm just indicating where the rib cage ends, where the ribs are, a little bit of spinal column detail to show where that would be. But overall, not going into any major surface detail. I've just indicated where the wings are going to come out of, so the deltoids there. And then onto the legs. So a slightly different way of doing it now. So I've just taken a sphere, pulled it down, duplicated that sphere, and then pulled it down for the calf and the lower leg. And then I'll just pull those two together to make sure that they meet. Obviously, crushing the calf into the back of the thigh, into those muscles at the back, because it has compression. And then just a cylinder for the back foot, and then that will be pulled down into the shape. And I've put 3 claws on it. So, you want to be constantly remeshing this, sculpting it, smoothing it, remesh, sculpt it, smooth it, remesh. That's the normal process. But it doesn't take long to build up this kind of look, especially if you've done all the pre-work in your drawing underneath, as you can see. So now I'm just working on the back of the heel, the calcaneus, just making sure that that looks about right before I join it all. And then when it is joined, you can then smooth it down, as you can see there. So all 3 very quickly come together, and you can add in the extra tendons and the extra bits of muscle volume. So very fast. It's this again. I know it's speed ramped, so it is a little bit deceiving, but it isn't. It doesn't take you long once you get your head around it. The tools that you'd need for this kind of job. So in this particular reference, the foot is hanging down. So I've done it as a flying creature that's just hanging his feet underneath, almost like a hawk or an eagle that's flying to catch fish. So he's holding it just underneath his body, something like that. And it's the kind of foot that I would use for a dragon or a wyvern on lots of designs that I've done in the past. And that's the bulk of it done, believe it or not. Obviously, we'd need to do, make that symmetrical. So you put 2 on there, and then that's the body pretty much done. And the wings, there are so many ways that we could do the wings. So we could do it right here in Nomad, just doing a bit of pose testing there. You can see I've put the pivot point right up at the top in the pelvis there. So, as I was just saying, you could do the wings in anything. So I've chosen to move to ZBrush just to show you how flexible these programs are. So again, it's a long answer to a question. If you say to me, which one should I use? I'm just showing you the different ways that I can do it and do it. So I moved it into ZBrush, and I'm just doing a bit of detailing here. Before I move on to the wings. So I'm just making sure that I'm just having a quick look at it to make sure it's how I wanted it to be. Bit of muscle volume, bit of tail volume down, thin it right down. You can see there I'm looking at it from all different angles. So it looks totally different from the top. And something I learned while making T-Rex for a commercial job is how thin they are across the hips. So they're a big creature, big thighs, big legs, but very thin across the back of the hips. Almost like a cow is very thin across that back part, but you'd have to have a look at that. So the wings then. So what better way to make the wings than using the amazing ZSpheres? So what you do with ZSpheres is you string together a load of shaped spheres in this case, and those spheres then are turned into geometry. So I'm just adding spheres, moving them, rotating them, scaling them, and they form the basis of this, let's call it an armature. So with the bat-like wing, you've done the forearm, you've done the upper arm, we're now on the fingers. So remember how a bat is made, it's pretty much what we're working on. Added an extra one and scaled it down for the claw. So you can see there 4 fingers and 1 thumb sticking out at the top. That's pretty much how a bat's wing is. That's used in loads of different films, for dragons, for example. But Game of Thrones with Drogon, pretty much this assembly, but it has an extra digit. They put 6 fingers on it with the thumb for some reason. I don't know why, but it looks pretty cool. Maybe just needed it for stability, but there you go. That's the underlying bone structure with muscles on it. And now the next thing would be, how do we make that skin? And again, tons and tons of different ways to do this. What I chose to do here was just to take 1 square, flatten it down to a plane, so it's got depth, so it's not just a one-sided polygon. And then I chose to basically mask out a certain area on it. So I'm just setting it up ready to do that. So here you can see I've basically painted a mask that is the shape of the wing that I want. And then I've inverted that mask, so I'm using an extra key press that inverts the mask. And then I extracted it off, so that's in the Z tools, down in the bottom of Z tools. And that extraction, then I can remesh it, or Z remesher it, or do whatever I need, and then crush it down to make it thinner and thinner, so it is much more like a thin piece of skin. And then it's a case of matching that with the move tool to the bone structure that we built. So lots and lots of mess in here just to get the amount of skin in the right place and make sure it's it's fit into that bone structure nicely. Now I tried a little bit of a masking technique here to move to get some ripples in the cloth, but I didn't like the idea. I just thought I'd leave that till much later on, so I removed that. And then more detail, just literally working along, adding a little bit more all the time to show that the bones are actually holding this up. Now what I didn't do till later is bend this. So at the moment it's quite flat, and there's no bend or curve to the wing. It doesn't look like it's wrapping around anything. So when we add that to the main body, you see then what it can look like. So the next thing to do was the join together. They were exported out and then basically brought them together into the scene with the body. You can see there I've changed the material as well to a greeny colour. So now it's just a case of moving that wing into the right position. So I haven't put the reference in here, but on the reference, if you remember, it's got that big shoulder going down into the body and down into the pectoral muscle there. And then I've done that move of that wing that I told you, so I've bent the wing around, just doing a very, very quick BPR render there just to see what it looks like with the shadow. And then that wing is pretty much based on our reference now, so duplicate it across once I'm happy, and then really then just make sure it fits perfectly, make sure it, pull it around and push it around once there's two of them. And that means we can, you can really see how far if you want to flap them down or move them up or bend them or, do some kind of major change to them. So overall, this probably took me about an hour and a half for everything, for the modelling, and it doesn't matter what you choose. Sometimes it does. So sometimes you need a specific tool. You might need the cloth tool, for example, and I'm going to use that on this model in a later video. But to get the block out done and get the creature to a level where you can say that's it, I'm happy with that. I like the legs. I like no arms in this case, but I like the front limbs for the wings. It works really well in for this kind of scenario. But again, so does Nomad. You've got to learn over time which one is right for you. Some people will just stick with Nomad. I've got most of my years under my belt with ZBrush. So when ZBrush recently came to the iPad, it's very hard for me to ignore it because I've had such a long time with it. However, Nomad has stood me in really good stead for 4 years now, and I'm very, very comfortable with using it. So I try and find the tools that are the best in each one, and then I just use them. So ZSpheres in ZBrush is second to none. It's just amazing. So for doing anything like these wings, it would be superb. But I could have done that in Nomad in a different way. Obviously, I've saved it out, and then it's ready to go to the next phase. So that's pretty much how we would block out a creature of this type. So don't forget, we've got a creature course coming out very soon after this video. And if you want any more details, there's plenty down below in the description. But other than that, have a great week. If you like the video, give us a thumbs up. If you've given us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and you can come along and see what we've got every week.